Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. This is great. Okay, so it's a photo of us. Listen, I'm not going to judge a person by the size of their tractor, but it's a small tractor. And in the scoop, there are 5 kids, ranging in the age of, let's say, from 4 till about 8 or 9, I guess. It's photographed in I'd say autumn or spring. They're all wearing kind of hats, like they're kind of wearing warm clothing. The photographer is like standing on the gravel road. All you see of the scoop is about maybe 5 feet off the ground. And in the scoop are like 5 kids just staring, just smiling brightly. All of them are smiling. It's so nice. Looking at the photographer. Probably shot in, I'll say the morning. Probably around like 9 or 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's this?
So those are my grandchildren.
Nice.
And what you didn't say is that it's interesting is that we have nearly the full range of melanin in the human race in those children, from
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So we'll
very
say
dark to practically transparent. But 3 of my grandchildren were born in Ethiopia.
okay.
And that's just, they are really they are central to my world.
Nice.
And they all live reasonably close, and we live kind of a cliche. I mean, they come over for Sunday dinner, and we have dinner for 12 every week, and
oh wow.
And they hang around and play in the yard afterwards. And
so how many kids do you have?
I have 3.
3. Okay, respect. And they live close to you, or do they live farther away?
Relatively within an hour.
Okay.
And an hour isn't bad because I have to drive 60 miles to buy a shirt. But our oldest son was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and now he's a tool and die maker, which is ranked in an apocalypse is ranked the second most useful profession after physician.
You're a weirdo, man.
But it's true. He literally can make anything out of steel.
That's amazing.
In fact, some days I'll say, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I can hear him deciding if I'm smart enough to understand the answer or not. And our oldest daughter is a therapist. And our youngest daughter is a preschool teacher.
Okay. Ranked number 3 and 4 in the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Okay. So is this photo on your property, on your land, on your farm?
Yep. It's my kids, my tractor, my property.
Nice. So why don't you draw a line from, okay. So like these kids how old is this photograph? Is it recent or?
A couple of years old.
Okay, so your grandkids are still young.
Now they're 17, 16, 15, 12, and 8.
Nice. Okay. So what, it's always an interesting kind of exercise to compare what was growing up for you at their age versus what growing up for them is now. And, you're young on a farm. Why don't you make that connection between them now and you then?
I was the youngest of 3 children. My sisters were like 5 years older. And we lived in kind of 2 different households because as soon as I started school, my mom went back to college to become a teacher.
Okay.
And so I lived a really autonomous childhood. I mean, I spent a lot of time alone, spent a lot of time outside and making things and breaking things. And I had a horse and rode around pretending I was Davy Crockett and things like that. So I got a motorcycle at a young age, fixed it up, one of the lines, the first line on my resume is I say, when people ask me if I need help, I say, no, thanks, I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the second line is, that's gotten me a lot of trouble over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
third line is, I still say it.
Nice.
So it's true. I always growing up, I did a lot of things. And so I grew up with the expectation that I could do a lot of things.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and the kids, my grandkids' lives are a lot more structured than mine ever were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're probably all smarter than me, but they haven't had quite the growth challenges that I had.
Right. And I think, the resilience that comes from that, look, can we paint with a broad brush and decide, that one's better than the other? The outcomes are, who knows what the outcomes will be? I mean, because it's true that, like, my daughter falls in the same age bracket as your grandkids. Super switched on, super access, like incredible access to information and range of ideas and experience. But on the other hand, like many kids, like most kids, it's a little less, more structured than say, and chances are my growing up was just a little bit more structured than your growing up. You know what I mean? Like, but I think, how do your grandkids internalize their experience? I mean, like, to be able to come as a refuge, to come to your land and have that on weekends is an amazing experience for them, to just broaden their understanding.
Yeah, and I try, like when I built that writer's shack, it has a concrete foundation
Mm-hmm.
with electric heat in it, and they helped me pour the concrete.
Nice. Nice.
And the oldest girl, who weighs half as much as I do, was the one we put on a plank in the middle of the concrete to trowel it smooth, because
Nice.
she was light enough to not bother it.
Right.
So I like giving them those small triumphs.
Yeah.
You know, I think, I mean, a small triumph is also only a small failure.
Right.
So the stakes are lower, but I think it helps build your confidence.
Sure. Sure. Okay. So let's just say somebody who's listening, who's thinking, okay, maybe I want to be a writer, or maybe I want to start something. What, like, go back to the time when you kind of decided, like, maybe I'll try to write. So you went to the community newspaper, I guess, and say, I mean, like, was it like a very kind of spontaneous decision, or was it one that you got to over time?
I think it got to me over time. You know, it took, it took a while to work up my nerve. And, and this is funny. I left out the most embarrassing part of the story. The first three things I wrote, I sent off to the Farm Journal, which at that time was the second biggest farm magazine in the United States. And they liked them, and they
Mm-hmm.
were talking to me about, being a regular in their magazine and getting my bio and everything.
Oh, nice.
And then they were headquartered in Philadelphia, and they moved to a different office building. And in the move, they lost my work that I had sent them.
Oh,
So the editor, who I'd been corresponding with for a couple of months, said, this is what happened, and can you send us copies? And we had gone back and forth a dozen times, and I was kind of thinking we were friends. And I sent her, the copies, what I wrote, and then I put a little PS on it, so try not to lose these, Ha
mm-hmm.
ha ha. And she wrote back and she said, okay, we don't need these, and we don't need anything you write ever again.
What?
Yeah, yeah. And later on, after I got to know people in the industry and I would tell them that story, they'd go, oh, yeah, that sounds like something she'd do.
Oh,
But
wow.
but at that moment, I was like, oh my God, there's one person on the planet willing to give me money for what I write, and now she hates me.
Yeah, but for what? Like,
Yeah,
that's very. She was having a very bad day.
yeah, yeah. So it was after that I went. After I recovered my nerve, that's when I went to my local paper.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Okay. So, I mean, that's a very inspiring story in terms of like, what is your relationship to failure in terms of either publishing or in terms of life, in terms of, like, you've said little failures already. So already I can tell that you have a kind of a relationship or an understanding of what it is to get setbacks, right? So
I've had enormous failures, personally and professionally. Even this book that I'm so proud of, I had an agent
title. What's the title?
Between the Helpless and the Darkness.
Nice.
I had a agent in New York. I mean, and really a very prestigious agency. I mean, I was beyond over the moon when he called me up and he said, I love your stuff. I'm going to take it to publishers and they're going to see it and they're going to say, where the hell has this guy been? And it's just going to be wonderful. It was the most excited I've ever been professionally. And he was wrong. They just didn't like it. I mean, he had all the entree you could imagine. He would send me copies of emails where they'd go, "Oh, Richard, thanks for bringing this book over. It was so good to see you. We need to have coffee again soon." He said, "But we're going to have to pass on this." And the common theme was it was too quiet, meaning there was no sex and not quite enough violence. And he finally just gave up and gave me back the rights after he had queried every major publisher in New York. And it really broke my heart.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just devastated. And, but you get devastated and I farmed for 30 years. And in those 30 years, I lost 2 crops to drought and 2 to floods and 2 to hailstorms.
Wow.
So you just, if you're going to live a life, you're going to have to expect to have things go south sometimes.
Yeah. Famously, J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter had it rejected again and again and again. And when they finally got accepted, it was like, yeah, we'll print 500. Who knows? Maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
And book publishing is like that,
It is because you really don't know. I mean, and the best part, the worst part about writing now is that most of the small presses have kind of disappeared. The people that only did like 4 or 5 books a year, so they weren't looking for big names and blockbusters.
Yeah.
That ship has kind of sailed. But the best thing is, you can self-publish now.
Yeah.
I mean, and Walt Whitman self-published Leaves of Grass, and that's a pretty solid recommendation. So, so that gives people an opportunity to put a lot of bad writing out into the world.
Yep.
But also to get some good stuff out there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as you say, put the good stuff out there. I see this photo of your 5 grandkids. So nice. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.